Hi, everybody. Welcome to Design and Dialogue. It's so nice to be back. I've taken a little break over the last month or so. My co-host, Glenn Adamson, has been doing a fantastic job, of course, in my absence as well. Today, we are very pleased to be welcoming Alberto Ríos De La Rosa from Mexico City. To be speaking to us about the Fundación Casa Wabi. Alberto, just by way of introduction, as I feel like we need to kind of give you a proper introduction. Alberto is the curator of the Fundación Casa Wabi and is a Mexican art historian and also contributing researcher and writer for, let me see if I can pronounce this properly, Colección Isabel y Agustín Coppel.
Coppel, yeah.
Coppel, okay.
Coppel, yeah.
Welcome, Alberto. Welcome to Design and Dialogue.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Ferdinand Brenda. And it's a great opportunity to talk about Casa Wabi. And thank you for inviting us.
Yeah.
And we're very, very happy to be here on behalf of the whole team of the foundation.
Of course. Casa Wabi is such a kind of, I don't know, it's kind of an enigma, isn't it? It's become, it's one of these places that you hear about, but you don't quite understand. It's such a large project. And I think what we want to cover today are its origins, let's say, right? Through the work of the artist Bosco Sodi and its foundation in, I believe, 2014. Its architecture, the relationship to Pritzker Prize winning architects like Tadoando and Alvaro Siza, and of course its residencies, the curatorial project that you lead, Alberto. And then beyond that, the work with communities, the film project, the clay project. So it's quite an expansive universe down there. So, you know, I guess I'm reminded of projects like Donald Judd's Chinati Foundation in Marfa, Texas. But I'm wondering, I guess, as a first question, and just to kick us off, Alberto, maybe you can tell us how you would describe Casa Wabi.
I will share the screen if that's okay with you. So
sure.
Go to the presentation, and here we are. Let me just have the slideshow. Yes, here we are. So, okay. So Casa Wabi, it's a foundation. It's a non-profit arts foundation that supports the commitment through the arts and supports an exchange between community and contemporary art. So we began in 2014. And ever since, we have grown to have 3 venues, which is the famous one, probably the most recognizable one, which is Puerto Escondido, we're half an hour away from Puerto Escondido in Oaxaca, in the south west of the country. But we also have 2 venues. This is the one in Puerto Escondido. We also have 2 venues that are in Mexico City. Is one, which is a very small exhibition space in Santa Maria la Ribera, a neighborhood very close to downtown Mexico City. And then the latest one is this very small as well house in Tokyo, which is called Casa Nano. So this foundation, again, the objective is to get to grow an exchange between contemporary artists, and I would say now contemporary creatives, because we've also worked with other creatives like designers, filmmakers, chefs that are not necessarily, this is up to debate, but that are not fine artists or fine arts practitioners. So we engage this exchange between creatives and the local communities. We believe in the development of the arts as a catalyzer for social and economic development in the areas that we work with. These are very different areas, and I will talk about them later in more detail, but we work with very remote, some of them, one of the poor areas in Oaxaca with 15 communities. Also in Mexico City, we work more with the artistic community, but we also do work with the members of the neighborhood that we're located in. And in Japan, in Tokyo, we want to create this exchange between Mexico and Japan, contemporary art, and grow relations between them. So this is sort of the foundation in one sentence, in one line. The foundation began as an initiative of a Mexican artist, Bosco Sodi. This whole enterprise began we opened in 2014, October 2014, but he began working on it a couple of years before. The whole idea of creating a residency for artists far away from the arts world and the very rapid developing arts world came when Bosco did a residency in Tokyo. He went to do a residency in Tokyo Wonder Site, which now disappeared and grow. But it's one of the most renowned as well residencies in Tokyo, and you go there to produce or to do research for some period of time. So he decided to do this in Mexico at the time when we didn't have many residencies in the country, and even when we opened in 2014, we've had very, very small amount of artistic residencies in Mexico. It's something that we have promoted, and it's something that it's been growing over the past 5 years, which I call, and in other interviews I have called, the age of the residencies in Mexico, because the past 5 years we've seen this sort of growing amount of residencies of all kinds in the whole country.
So Alberto, if I could stop you for just a second and ask, what year was Bosco doing the Wonder Site residency in Japan?
I don't have the exact date now, but it was in the beginning, like about 8 years ago, or even a bit more than that. So it was 3 years before we opened, 2011, 2012. And then he was living in Barcelona at that time. He's now living in New York. And he moves between New York and Mexico City, where he has his studios. He has a studio in Puerto Escondido that we will see in a minute. He has his studio in Red Hook in New York. And yes, he's been a very prolific and active artist, represented by several galleries across the globe. And ever since he started to work in the development of Casa Wabi, his personal artwork, his personal oeuvre has evolved as well. He has paid a lot of attention, and he has been focusing in the clay, and we see in these images, these clay cubes that he wants to bring back this whole, and we'll see how this also has played an impact in the development of the foundation. He wants to bring back this material to the use and to the language and to the discourse of the contemporary art.
Would you say that Bosco's been active for the past 20 years? And I don't know, is it appropriate to describe his work as almost a kind of expressionistic minimalism?
Yes, I mean he's been active for the past 15 to 20 years. He's done several shows in Mexico City, London, New York, Rome, France as well, in Spain when he was living in Barcelona as well. So he's actually preparing a show in the Dallas museum. So he has inherited these aesthetics from French minimalism as well, French expressionism in the 1970s and 80s. He's also paid a lot of attention. When you study his work closely, you'll find that chemistry plays a very important role in this. How the material, the formalities of the materials react, and this is perhaps because his father is a chemist. He has a PhD in chemistry, but he's also paid attention in how materials react, how color react with these materials, how they transform through various processes. So at first glance, in this image, for example, you wouldn't relate the artwork, the painted, the red work that you have at the back with the clay cubes, but when you get to study the way he works with the materials and how the materials react and how the materials transform and become something completely different from their origin to the end of the process.
And in fact,
relation.
Yeah, in fact, there's a kind of alchemy that I think connects his work to spiritual practices in Mexico, and somehow. And I'd love for you to elaborate on this, but somehow that relationship between Bosco's work and Tarahuando, I think, is very interesting. So one key question I had for you, I mean, the name Casa Wabi, I'm wondering why the interest in this kind of imperfect and ephemeral, why the fascination with Japanese culture?
Well, Bosco, ever since this residency that he did, he became obsessed in the good way with the Japanese culture, with Japanese train of thought, and realized also that, as I was saying in the previous image, perhaps we should go back. You have a little bit of chance that you need to give space to chance and to sort of fade when you work with these materials. So if we look at the clay cubes that we have here, we understand the cubes, we understand made out of clay, but they're not perfect cubes. That does not mean necessarily that they are not perfect artworks. No, if we were to compare it, for example, and as you said before, with the Chinata Foundation, if we were to compare it with the perfectly silhouettes of a Donald Judd cube, that in relationship with this, that it is not more or less effective or more or less aesthetically pleasing. We can also find this aesthetic and this perfection, if you want to say, in the imperfection, in the chance, in the crack, the beauty of the crack, and I loved and when you see them, when you're standing in front of them, you realize that these cracks or this this texture that the fire gives when you burn them, that you can't really control that in a certain environment, or you can't control.
I would call that the craft in essence, right? I mean,
the craft, exactly. But the craft can also be perfect in that way. So these cracks. Sorry. Yeah.
No, I only wanted to mention that there's another relationship there to the Casa Wabi project, right? Which is the ways in which artists that do the residencies are related to communities, etc.
Exactly.
But we'll talk about that. Please continue.
We went to the residencies in a minute. So he made a huge research on who would be a good artist, a good architect to work with. And they decided the land where Casa Wabi is situated, which is in half an hour away from Puerto Escondido. It's a land that Bosco's father purchased a long time ago. So they've also been, and they used to camp. They used to go to the beach and camp since they were younger. Bosco and Carla, because I will also mention Carla Sodi is Bosco's sister, and the director of the foundation. So, and Lucia Corredor as well, Bosco's wife, and she's an entrepreneur as well. And they both, Bosco and Lucia, made a whole team to do research who would be a good architect to work with, and then decided to work with Tadao. At the time, Tadao was building another center for the university in Monterrey, it's one of the northern cities of Mexico. So he already had some sort of connection with Mexico. Casa Wabi was the second project of Tadao in the country. Now there are only 3. So that connection, together with Bosco's work in getting in finding him and getting him to accept, finally resulted in Tadao accepting to do Casa Wabi. And I'd like to share this with you. It's in our webpage, but this is the very first sketch of Casa Wabi that Tadao drew in a napkin on a dinner time with Bosco and his family. So this is the very beginning. Once he accepted it, and then we began this whole process of getting to build this fantastic venue in the middle of the beach. May I say this is the very first time that Tadao also works with Palapa, these palm ceilings. So the dialogue between Palapa makers and Tadao studio was very, very, very rich. And the central
Alberto,
Palapa,
can we have a look at the napkin sketch once more?
Yes, of course.
This is significant because these are the 2 key components of the architectural project, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Exactly.
So the concrete wall, which is the kind of archetype of Tadaoando, and the thatched roof, which is a kind of that's an almost indigenous use of Palapa, right? Where it's both water resistant and breathable.
Exactly, and completely natural in the way that it only used palm and wood. So we can say that the whole ceiling structure of the foundation it's renewable in that way, which is a very interesting contrast with the concrete that defines every Tadao building. But as you can see in this drawing, the original ceiling was much more Japanese style, classical Japanese style, and less Palapa style. So we can see the transformation from this drawing to the Palapa making process that all the buildings have. So on the left, you have 6 bungalows or rooms. These are the rooms for our residents. In the middle, you have the main Palapa, which is the center of gathering. They eat, their offices are there. Bosco's family's rooms are there as well. The kitchen is there. That's the entrance from the main road, and also the entrance or the exit to the beach and the pool. And then on the right, you have Bosco's studio, which is another more square Palapa, and the observatory. And between the Palapa, the main Palapa and Bosco studio, you have the gallery.
One question, yes. Alberto. You mentioned rooms for Sodi's family. So the Casa Wabi is literally a casa as well, huh? It's actually a private house as well as a foundation.
Yes, it works. Sort of the whole infrastructure of the foundation of the house. It's covered in terms of cost and everything by Bosco's family and Bosco himself. And the agreement is that Bosco has the house 2 months per year, and then the other 10 months is the foundation. But the foundation does not cover infrastructure, it covers the programming and the running of the foundation. So these months are usually Christmas and summer, which is also perfect time for the foundation to rest and have some holidays. And it's a good time as well because usually residents wouldn't come on Christmas. So it's a time for Bosco's family. That doesn't mean the house is closed, and this is very important for us to say. The house is open 363 days per year for tours. We give tours every day, twice a day. And so the house is open even if Bosco is there. And sometimes some visitors might be able to actually see him work in the studio, or if they visit at the time he's there, which is a fantastic opportunity to see him firing the clay cubes, or now he's doing some spheres. So it's open throughout the year, but for the programming of the foundation, we have 10 months, and then Bosco has and his family has it for another 2 months. So yes,
balance.
answering your question. Sorry. Yes,
it's such an interesting balance between the kind of origins of the place. You mentioned the family owning it or establishing it as a kind of camping site years ago, and this vision of the artist's generosity, in a sense, right? To share that space with like-minded creatives. So really interesting balance. Is it true that there's not a single piece of glass in the whole project?
It is true. It is true. There is one that we had to install later on, but in the gallery, the gallery has a whole window that gives light, obviously, to the exhibition. But if we consider everything else but the gallery, there is not a single piece of glass. So it runs, the air and the wind runs freely. All the windows in the bungalows are wooden structures with what do you call it? They open and they have these
brise-soleil, the shutters.
Yeah, the shutters. Thank you. They have the shutters that allow the wind to pass, and the palapa is a perfect. Is a perfect example of how the wind runs freely and how to get the wind running through the space for ventilation. So, and it's also one of the largest palapas, and some people say that we are the largest one in at least in the Oaxaca state, the central palapa. But we haven't really come to see if that's true or not. But it's certainly a massive structure. Yes.
Just to understand the scale of the project that we see before us, can you give us a sense of the length of that wall that connects?
Yes, this whole wall that goes from the bungalows all the way to Bosco's studio, it's 330 meters long.
Wow.
And it's between 3 meters tall in some areas, down to 5 or 6 meters, because it changes and the levels change. But in the center line, it's 3 to 4 meters tall by 300 meters long, 330 meters long. It's important also to say that Bosco's and Tadao selected the grounds where they have the least impact in terms of vegetation. And this is something that we continuously been working with the development of the other pavilions that I will talk to in a minute about. And the impact was very minimal. Cacti are protected in the state of Oaxaca. So we have to remove the cacti and replace it in the gardens. We have a 47 hectares gardens that they were designed by another Mexican renowned architect, Alberto Calach.
Right.
And part of this whole process was to relocate the cacti and other plants that we had to remove to build the wall and the structure. So
please
the impact was very reduced in that way. Yes.
Please take us inside. We'd love to see.
So this is a studio. This is Bosco's studio, where you see how clays are being produced. But you can see here the contrast between the palapa and the Tadao on the wall. Each one, I don't know if you can see, the wall has section. It's divided as if you're having a Lego brick. That rectangle or that piece is a Tadao and the signature, and it's two 240 meters by 120 meters. So you can actually see the measurement of the whole wall by, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times 120 is 60. So you have 6 meters wall in some areas, and then you have 360 in others. So it changes, but you have the very same composition throughout the structure as well. Here we have another image. This is a very early image of when the gardens weren't that high, and this is the entrance from the palapa to the gallery. And you could, back in the day, you could see the sea. Now we have a beautiful garden, so we can't. But here you see the transition from the walls and the concrete walls to the beach and to nature. So it's very direct in that way. You have only the wall, the concrete finishes, and then you have the sand, and then you have the garden. So you have, and you have the sea in about 15 meters or even 20 meters. So you have a very direct connection to nature. This is one of our highlights as well when you come to visit, is the observatorium. This is a very structure that is not completely round, and this is where our symbol for the foundation comes, and that circle that is not completely perfect, and following the Wabi-Sabi, this is from outside,
stunning
Wabi-Sabi philosophy, and here we have the bungalows as well, so you see how also the relationship with the landscape is. This photo is 2 years old, so the garden has grown a lot more. So you have 6 equally sized bungalows. Each one has their own private bathroom, their bed, their working space, and these little terraces that lead to the beach. And then you have, yes.
Alberto, is there a relationship between the design here of Casa Wabi and these bungalows and a nearby hotel that I've heard about?
No, actually no. The hotel is entirely different. There is a hotel, and they are also our sponsors, so we have a very close relationship with them. It's Puerto Escondido by Grupo Habitat, and both Carlos Couturiel and the Miche brothers have been tremendously helpful to the foundation as well. They opened 7 months before than we did.
Okay.
So they did. We were building at the same time. They opened before, and the architecture of the hotel is entirely different. You do have palapas because it's the material. It's a very useful material when building in the beach and living in the beach. They have, I think, 16 rooms. Their rooms have their own private pool, and they are similar if you think about it, if you were to see it from the air. But once you enter the hotel, you see that the architecture is different.
So it's purely coincidental that the hotel is adjacent to Casa Wabi.
Yes, and it's a development that we began. It was Casa Wabi and the hotel. Now it has grown, so you have many more developments. There is Punta Pájaros, there is Casa Cosmos, Casa Tiny. So these other houses for renting on Airbnb or for renting in other places that are building this sort of community. So you come to, I don't know, if you want to stay in one of the houses, then you're able to sort of go and visit Casa Wabi or have a very relaxing time on the beach, because it's a very not private, but very small beach that has only these houses and the foundations. So it has grown in the last years. And if you're a lover of architecture, you also have a very good opportunity to see other houses made by other architects. Right next to it, that are also very interesting. So going back to this, so just to finish, in the lower part we have the artist studios. So it was also very important for Bosco and Tadano to have spaces for the artists to work and to produce if they wish to. So the 2 small bungalows that we have in the lower part are the closed studios, and then we built other open studios that are not in this image 2 years after we opened. So there are 8 studio space for the artists, and we usually have 5 to 6 residents at the time. Yes, so if you don't mind, I can continue talking about the architecture, because we obviously had Wando as our signature architect when we opened, but we've been dedicating a very good line of thought and programs to have other spaces, all of them useful spaces, spaces that we currently use for our mission in the following years. So the second space that we built is the clay pavilion by Portuguese architect Alvaro Siza. This is a pavilion for those who that might not be acquainted with his work. He is one of the biggest Portuguese architects, and he's been working with sustainable architecture. And most of his works, or the signature of his style, is the use of brick. So Bosco, and by this time, the foundation, we opened this in 2016, the foundation and Bosco, we reached to Alvaro Siza to build this clay pavilion. And the clay pavilion, here we have another image, it's a pavilion dedicated to our clay program. I will talk a little bit more about that, but the idea is to use this space for children and artists in the area to work with clay, with the natural clay that they found in their own garden or in their own town. Each one of these bricks were produced in the town nearby, which is a brick town. It's called Oaxaca. And we use them to build this pavilion. And here you have a small kiln that we use also for firing the artworks that the children and the artists do in the workshops of the clay program. When we opened this pavilion, we became I hope I'm wrong, there might be another one, but by the time we were the only Mexican institution to have 2 buildings by Pritzker architects. I think we still are, but yeah.
And I believe this is the first building by Alvaro Siza in Mexico, if that's correct.
And the only one, exactly, in Mexico so far. So yes, we're very privileged and very honored to be able to work with both Alvaro Siza and Tadao within the first 2 years of our and Kalach, and Alberto Kalach, which I will talk in the next one. This is one of the latest additions. I included here because it's connected to the clay pavilion, but it's this tower is the last pavilion that we opened. It's a high temperature pavilion. It's a tower that it's made out of concrete and it's covered by brick. And Alberto, he wanted also to have a reference point. If you're working in the gardens or walking around the garden, sometimes you really don't have a reference point so where everything is. We give maps, or you might get lost in them. So this is a point. This is a tower that you can see from anywhere in the garden, and therefore you're able to locate yourself.
So I wonder, Alberto, yeah. has Casa Wabi become a kind of tourist attraction in the way that it's a campus of architectural masterpieces like the Vitra design campus, or the, we mentioned before Marfa, right? So is this the idea that you would continue to commission contemporary architects to build these pavilions on site?
Yeah, definitely. We want all these pavilions to be useful, as I said before. So the next one we're working on, that we don't have a date to open just yet, is a carpenter's pavilion. So we will also give, it's very similar to the clay one, but all these buildings are an opportunity to engage in sustainable architecture, while we also open this for a opportunity for people living in Mexico to be acquainted with these works, and also support Mexican architects that we will see. We will see in a minute. This is another one of our pavilions. I will go a little bit fast through the pavilions because we have
quite a lot to talk about. Yeah,
we have a lot. I'd love to talk about exactly. So this is the chicken co-op that it was designed by another Japanese architect, Kengo Kuma, and he's now also he's huge in Japan, but he's the architect of the Tokyo Olympic Stadium for the Olympic Games that we will have in the next month. So he came to work with us in developing this chicken co-op. We have chickens and we produce a lot of eggs that both residents, we give them to the residents as well, and we also sell them to the hotel in a sort of sustainability way. So it's a Kengo Kuma egg breakfast.
One question, Alberto. I understand that Casa Wabi overall is striving for a kind of self-sufficiency, and the chicken coop here is just one part of a larger project. Is there a farm as well?
No, we don't have a farm as it is. We have bees. We've been having bees and apiary. I don't have an image of this in this presentation, but we have an apiary, and we've been producing honey. I think the last year we produced about 40 liters of honey that residents get to taste, and we sell that in both in Mexico City and Puerto Escondido's venue. So yeah, it's fantastic to be able to see. This is a very dark honey because of the color of the flowers in the garden. We also have fruit trees. So we have had mangoes, lime, lemons, papaya. We don't do papaya anymore because it needs a lot of pesticides and we don't want to work with that. But what else? We have tomatoes.
Right.
But we don't have a farm per se. We used to have horses. We don't have them anymore. And we have goats at the moment in an effort to see if there is going to be milk soon. But that's on to be continued because we're working on that slowly. It's a process, but yeah, we do want to become self-sufficient and sustainable. Also, we have solar panels that help us with the electricity and heaters, solar heaters also for the water. So we want to be as sustainable as we can. This is the other, we have two more pavilions, but this is the Guayacan pavilion. Guayacan is this medicinal tree that is very difficult to grow, and Bosco realized that it grows very easily in this area. So we decided to commission this pavilion to the Mexican studio called Ambrosio Echegaray. They're fantastic people, are fantastic architects to work with. And this space is to teach about the growth of the Guayacan pavilion. And the result, you can see the Guayacans here in the center. But the idea is that we donate these Guayacans to the town and the communities to work with. But if someone from a development of a private house wants to buy one, we also sell them. And we have, because it's an endangered species, we managed to get the how do you say it? The permits from the government to grow them and sell them.
So many different activities, Alberto.
We do.
I'm wondering, I mean, apart from your work as curator, how extensive is the staff to manage all of these projects?
We're not many. We're actually a very small staff, and together with the gardeners, the kitchen staff, and the director of our residency in Tokyo, we are 19 people. So it's five gardeners, 4 ladies that work in the kitchen, and then the director, myself, and the community team that works in Puerto Escondido. So we're very small staff to be able to work on this, but we do it with a lot of passion, and we are a very strong and connected team as well. So yeah, we for example, I go to Puerto Escondido once a month for 4 or 5 days to work with the residents, to see the exhibitions and to check everything, because even though I'm a curator, I do also go and check the clay pavilion, for example, or
Are
the
you also
apiary.
are you also responsible for selecting the architects that are building these pavilions?
No, the architects it's Bosco mainly, because it's infrastructure. So in that way, it's Bosco, Carla, and I do play a role as well, but I'm more focused in selecting the artists. So I will talk about that. We don't have that much time, so I will have
Yeah,
to
please, let's continue.
on that.
Let's continue, Alberto.
So yeah, so aside from the architecture, we've also have these artistic interventions. This is a clay cubes made out of clay bricks that Bosco developed. Is 64 cubes, and is the Clanton's pavilion. So you can see in more detail here. We also have the compost pavilion that it was done by Solano Benitez and Gloria Cabral, these Paraguayan architects that won the Venice Lion. And we will be developing compost and teaching the communities how to do compost for their own gardens in this pavilion. Here is also the gardens that Alberto developed. And then we have as an artistic intervention, Lucia Koch and Hector Zamora Umaboa Orden Pavilion. For those of you that are in New York, Hector had the commission of the Met roof last year, I think it was.
Okay.
He's a Mexican artist, fantastic artist. He worked with us in having this artistic intervention in the middle of the garden. So the garden is also becoming slowly a sculpture garden.
Now, were those bricks developed or produced at Casa Wabi?
No, these ones were produced in Monterrey, and this piece was originally shown in the Contemporary Museum of Monterrey, and they were stored there, and then Bosco and Hector decided to place them here. So they brought them from Monterrey. They're actually lattice work. So and you can see the round sort of cylinders that they use.
Yeah, beautiful.
But they are Mexican, if that matters. We also have a Lotus Growth underground sculpture garden. He buried, I think it's 20 of his earliest sculptures. So you don't get to see them, but you get to fantasize about them when you walk around the sculpture garden. You can see in this diagram where are they buried.
Wow.
You get to fantasize about them, which is something fantastic. It's a sculpture garden that you don't get to see, but you know it's there.
Is that diagram a path through the garden?
Yeah, this diagram is the path. You can see the path, but you can also see where the sculptures are buried.
I see.
Buried. But you see here, there is no drone that can actually show the whole extent of the foundation. We're trying to work on that. But you can see here, for example, some part of the garden. We also have a wall that Bosco did out of marble, white marble. This is at the time where Donald Trump wanted to build his wall. So Bosco was very focused in showing how a wall might be very useless if it meant to separate people.
It's funny. It's quite as a concept in Project Casa Wabi. It's quite utopian in a sense, right? And that it's both social and in many ways political. What's happening here, and that the use of, when I saw it, the aerial view and plan, it actually made me think about early utopian city plans, and I guess I'm curious how, what the impact of the overall Fundación has had on the surrounding region. But we can talk about that later. Please continue, Alberto.
No, we do that. This is the last one. This is Izumi Kato, Japanese architect, in collaboration with Bosco. So he used Bosco's clay cubes as his canvas to show these anthropomorphic, fantastic creatures that he is famous for. He did at one of our shows back in 2019, and then he came back as a resident, and then developed this to leave them in the, so you're walking in the garden and you find these fantastic beings. So going back to what you were saying, yes, it's beautiful, the architecture. Yes, it's fantastic to have this artistic intervention. Yes, the Tao, Pritzker. But the core of the foundation is the work we do with the communities, the work the exchange, as I said before, that we foster when working with the communities. What do we mean when we talk about communities? At least in Puerto Escondido is 15 towns that we engage with, and there is this whole plan of working with different sectors of these communities. So we work with primary, secondary, high school and university schools, but we also work with cooperatives, food cooperatives, tourism cooperatives. We work with music bands. We have a fantastic program with Latin American composers with music bands. So we do have this very open range of communities that we work with, and we do that with 5 programs. The most famous one probably is the Residencies and community one, but we also have clay program, a film program, a mobile library, and an exhibitions program.
So for the sake of time, because I know you have quite an interesting video that we'd like to show. I think we'd like to focus here our last 5 minutes on the residencies and community, and then we'll show the video, and then we'll try to take questions. Okay.
Perfect. So the residencies and community, we invite residents from all over the world, and as I said before, artists or creative, to engage in a community project. Here in the image we have Jenny Mao, who came from LA, I think, and he did the residency and then decided to live in Mexico. He now lives in Mexico. But what we do is we invite them. Back in the day, we used to do everything by invitation. Now we have a curatorial board. Ever since January this year, we began a curatorial board. So we make this selection. We invite 5 to 6 residents per 6 months, 6 weeks, sorry. So it's 5 to 6 residents every 6 weeks, and we have 6 periods throughout the year. So in total, we have from 30 to 36 residents every year, and all of them have to engage in a community project. What does a community project mean? It could take any form of, it could be a workshop, it could be developing something, building something, it could be a class. So all these projects together, we have had 370 artists together. They have this huge impact in the region. We're talking about very poor communities, or communities that have a very limited access to culture or to art or even to literature. They have their own culture, so we don't want to be patronizing, and we don't want to bring, but they don't have an access to a gallery or a museum in at least 6 to 7 hours. And back in the day, they didn't even have an access to a cinema. Now there is a commercial cinema. So these communities, we want to show them through the eyes of the artist what an artistic practice can be. And this could be, as I said before, fine arts, but it could also be design, but it could also be music, but it could also be food. It could be bonsai gardening. We had a bonsai resident last year. So it's this very open, multidisciplinary exercise. This year, we couldn't have face-to-face contact with the community because of COVID. The foundation hasn't closed. We closed only for 3 months, but ever since June last year, we've been open with a very tight COVID protocol that includes stopping the contact with the community, but that didn't stop us to do work. So we asked residents, for example, to do public art interventions or interventions to schools. So by the time the kids come back to the schools, they will have these fantastic murals, playgrounds, sculptures all around all of their schools. So we have been working very hard to maintain the project in conjunction with the COVID restrictions. So this is the residencies program. I will also like to say that this is all fully funded. We don't charge any resident for anything. We all live of fundraising and donors, public and private donors. So we've been able to do this mission through that. We also have the clay program that probably I'll show it to you in the video. That will be much more direct. That we work with children in the recuperating the whole work with clay, local clay. We also have the the film program that brings filmmakers and also do screenings for the communities in our auditorium. And right now it's a little bit stopped because of COVID, but we intend to reopen probably next year when it's nicer and healthier, sorry. And we also want to do this.
Alberto?
When it's safe to do it. And the mobile library, the mobile library is this fantastic project that we do in partnership with this foundation in Oaxaca. Is this van, and the van has all these books, and it goes twice a day to one community to read and work with the children. So we have facilitators that work with that. And finally, quickly, the exhibitions program. We do have 2 venues, Mexico City, which is this one, and Puerto Escondido. And we have a program of exhibitions. Mexico City is for Mexican emerging artists that do not have a gallery and they wish to have an exhibitions space. So we have projects for these emerging Mexican artists. And Puerto Escondido is much more to recognize, it is internationally recognized and historical artists. So we have had Daniel Buren, Michel Francois, Janis Kunelis, Izumi Kato, Hugo Rondinone, Lawrence Wiener, and we will have Uma Baba next year. And so we invite them to do projects that engage. This is the Hugo Rondinone exhibition, which was, he worked with the children, with drawings made out of the children, by the children in the communities of the sun. It was a fantastic exhibition project. Now Hugo is part of our curatorial board as well. And this is the current exhibition that we have. If you get to visit Casa Wabi, you will see each resident leaves an artwork for our collection. And this piece has to be produced or has to be related to the work and the experience of Casa Wabi. So we invited French curator Nicolas Bourriot to curate the very first selection of these bitácoras, we call them, but it's a collection of the foundation. So you have here, that's a show that we will have here this year, throughout this year until January. And yeah, so we're very, very happy to have this this show on our grounds.
Alberto, can you clarify, all of these projects are free of charge? Or these programs are free of charge to the communities? And are you, is Casa Wabi at all supported by the Mexican government?
Yes, yes to both. If we invite the artists, we provide them with a domestic flight, Mexico City, Puerto Escondido, food, materials for the community project, and the lodging. Everything is free of charge. Sometimes artists, because they want to do much bigger projects that we can't pay, they support the project with their own funds. But we basically cover everything. As a resident, we cover everything when it comes to do an exhibition project in Puerto Escondido, and we live through the support of, and I like to say this, a big thank you to the government of Oaxaca state. They have been tremendously helpful in supporting all our programs in the region, in everything that happens in Oaxaca, obviously, not in Mexico City or Tokyo. But yeah, they have been pivotal ever since we opened. The governor and the Ministry of Culture of the state of Oaxaca has supported us. And we also have had some funding from the federal government, especially for exhibitions. we also have had in the past for some of our programs. And we live also by the donations of private members and private companies.
Of course.
And the hotel as well has been terrific, and other private foundations that have also supported us. Before we go to the video, I'd like to say that, as I said, all our residents are by invitation only, and they follow a curatorial program by our board. But we just opened this open call with our review publication, and it's a residency prize that we give. This is the 4th year that we do it, and we ask artists, creatives from all over the world to submit a project and submit a proposal for 3. We will give 3 prizes, one for 2021 at the very end of this year, and then 2 more for next year. So I extend the invitation to everyone that is interested to apply. You can go to our review, or you can go to our webpage and to apply, because we enjoy a lot these open calls, because then we get to see many more variety of artists that would like to come to Casa Wabi. If you're not an artist, if you're a designer, an architect, a chef, also apply, because what matters for us is the community project that you propose.
Yeah. Are you also interested in the performing arts, Alberto?
Yes. And yeah, fine arts is all media, performing, fine arts, performance, dance, music. What else am I missing? Yeah, writing, literature, writers also as well. We have a prize that we give to with editorial in Mexico, independent editorial in Mexico. So we have writers as well, theater writers, theater actors, or film. We're very open, as long as the community project has some impact in the communities.
Well, Alberto, listen, thank you
Yes.
for that incredible overview. We're going to look at a short film now, which is a kind of summary of the activities of Casa Wabi, which may include some things that Alberto didn't have time to discuss. Everyone, please put your questions for Alberto in the chat, and I hope to get to 1 or 2 of those at the end of this film. So please, Alberto.
Yes.
Is there sound?
Oh yes, let me see how this, maybe because I'm listening here. How do we do this? Give me 1 second.
If you have headphones, maybe without the headphones, we can hear.
Yes, I'll put this down. So let's see. Okay. Stop sharing this.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alberto. What's great about seeing the film, and it's available on the Casa Wabi website as well, is that you get a sense of scale. A lot of the aerial photographs of the architecture really are somehow abstract because the project is so large. So it's wonderful to see people moving through the spaces and engaging with the architecture and the landscape as well. I'm just checking quickly in the chat here to see if we have any questions. Let's see, a lot of thank yous, etc. I suppose, Alberto, I had one last question, which was really about, I mentioned before how Casa Wabi may have impacted the local community. Besides the residencies and the work that you've described that you're doing there, I'm just curious how a project of this scale has maybe changed things in the neighboring towns, etc.
Well, we definitely have had an impact. It's very difficult to measure the impact that you have in the cultural sphere rather than if you build houses, or you give feed people, or you give access to health, it's much easier to measure than giving access to culture. But we definitely have had an impact. In the first 3 years. The communities, the people of the communities nearby stopped thinking that we were only a summer house, and they started to come with us asking for cultural projects. So I think you see the bigger impact, not only in the access to clay, for example, or to all these workshops, but also you visit the region, and I can take you to 2 or 3 communities, if not all of them, and you will see, at least in the main squares or in the schools or in the cooperatives, something that a resident from Casa Wabi has done. And namely, it could be a mural, a sculpture, a workshop, a garden, a web page even. We have a web page for the ecotouristic area of Chacagua, for example, which is a marvelous lagoon, or the Manialtepec lagoon. This access to visibility as well. But you go and see that it's very difficult for us to communicate sometimes because you have to go and see it, And right now we're working in the new structure of a web page, and something we really want to show is this impact visually, at least with images.
Okay.
But in terms of numbers, we have all these numeralia that we can share with you of how many people has been impacted. But I think it's more of when you go there, everybody knows now that Casa Wabi is this place where people go and see films and see exhibitions and where they go to your town and with crazy artists that do crazy sculptures or crazy murals, you know, and yeah, it's after we're gonna turn 7 years now, so we are and we are working also in making these programs stronger, in having a also a stronger selection of more international artists. We've also the opportunity for more Latin American artists or artists from the South or other regions to come and to engage in these exchanges. You don't also have to be artists that work with the community. It could be anyone that comes and experiments. So it also has had an impact in the artistic community, at least in the country, and also the community of the towns.
Alberto, listen, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing the Casa Wabi project. It's fantastic. I hope to visit. I hope to see it one day in person. I hope one day we can have a beer or a coffee together there in Mexico. I'd love to thank everyone for joining us today and listening to this great presentation on Casa Wabi. I'd like to remind you that next week, Glenn Adamson will be back with Joep van Lieshout. So please tune in then. Thank you, everyone. This has been Design and Dialogue. Thanks again, Alberto.